I was at a wedding, and I met a girl that I was mutual friends with. All of, well, all of the guys that I had dated were also at the wedding. And and I was telling her, I was like, well, I've gone through all of these ones, and none of them worked out, so there's no more guys left. And she was like, oh, you need to come to Lynchburg, Virginia. So I did. I went. I was like, well, if all the guys are in Lynchburg, I'll go down there and see him. And that's where he was. And we actually only dated for about 8 months, got engaged. We're married 4 months later. So our entire relationship, we were friends for about a year prior to all of that. And then we got married within a year of actually dating.
Were you active in faith, active in church? Was it just kind of this underlying thing in your life? Like, what did that look like?
We did join a church early in our marriage in Maryland, and even that, though, it was a great community of people, but everybody in that community was asking questions. We still hadn't gone through that deconstruction of our faith and figuring out what do we really believe in and everything. So I think when my dad died, that was probably the big catalyst for me of who is God? You know, can I trust him? Can I trust him with the people that I love? Can I trust him with the way that I had thought my life would go? We bought a house, you know, and it was kind of like, okay, we bought this house, we both have jobs, plan it all out, and we get pregnant, and it's wonderful, it's easy, you know, simple, I'm so excited. And then we ended up losing our first baby. I think that was probably the second big thing, you know. My dad had passed, and within a year we lost our first kid too. So it was like, man, I guess I can't try to plan anything, you know. So we had Noah, and we actually had fertility issues for a couple of years after that, because I wanted boom, boom, boom. You know, I originally had wanted like 4 kids and all of this stuff, and Charlie took a little while to get, but she came around, and she was 6 months old, and there was Ethan, you know. So it was kind of like a perfect storm of events, and all of a sudden we had 3 kids under 4, and life got a little crazy. And
yeah, I call it survival mode, but like essentially like any parent with young kids, it feels like you're treading water. And literally everything that was just a gap in who I was or my maturity level as a guy, like just came to the surface, and it's like, whoa, you know. So I guess some of the earlier pain in life had put me to a point where it's like my goal in life was to be comfortable, to be safe, to avoid pain at all costs. And it kind of lulled me into this sleep state. I was on autopilot really in life, on my phone all the time, just checked out in general.
I don't think either one of us were really asking those questions of why do I feel empty, or why do I feel alone, or why are you behaving this way? You know, it was just kind of one of those things where it's like, pick your big girl panties on and keep going, you know. Eventually it'll all be okay. This is just a season. We're going to be fine. We'll get through the season just like everybody else gets through their season. And at some point we'll start the hard work, you know, of digging deeper.
We were at a pool, and I don't even know what I was on my phone for or what it was about. Charlie was learning how to swim at the time, so we'd taken her floaties off, and Jenni was really like solely focused on her. And the other 2, they were putting on, like, you know, Noah was getting sunscreen on. And the first thing I remember is a 14-year-old girl in the pool saying, hey, there's a baby at the bottom of the pool, or there's a kid. And right then, I knew it was mine. So I jumped in, I got Ethan out of the bottom of the pool.
I saw what looked like Ethan completely dead, being lifted out of the pool. He's blue and his eyes are back, and I always thought that I'd be that person that would immediately go to God. But I think at this point in my life, I had already begged God for 2 other lives. So I didn't even think to ask God for this one. I just started screaming help.
And I gave him CPR. I had gotten certified through work. After the second round of chest compressions, his eyes started to kind of roll back, and he started to cough and to sort of, you know, throw up and get the water out of his lungs.
Screaming himself, and they handed him to me, and they told me it was, screaming's good, you know, screaming's good. And so he was up and walking the next morning and
Yeah.
made a complete recovery. But I would say that that was the beginning of our
Yeah.
healing process, of us being like, whoa, you know, like
Yeah.
we had to wake up ourselves.
So we talk about the warning signs of something not being right. Like, it just happened to, like, these things were all kind of coming to the surface all at once. And one of those things was that I was seeking fulfillment outside of our marriage from other women. And it was all essentially me trying to get this cavernous gap in myself met through ways that weren't ultimately going to fill it.
We were hanging out with some friends in our neighborhood pretty late one night, and I just looked over and saw that Josh was on his phone, and I kind of snuck a glance at the phone and could see that it was a woman. I think at that moment I just thought to myself, really, like, this picture of this world, this picture of life that I thought I was creating, I think I already was feeling like it was completely shattered, but this was the sledgehammer that just completely destroyed what I thought my life was. We talked a little bit about it that night, and the next day I just said, I'm leaving. You know, I actually packed a bag and left him with the kids. I said, you know, you can figure this out. I need to go figure out what's next. I leaned on another woman who had gone through something just like this just months before, and I think she was the first person I called, and I just said, what do I do here? You know, and she had also lost a child, and so just having that connection allowed me to know that, and seeing where her marriage was at that point, what the work that they were putting through, all of that made me have hope that even though this was the absolute bottom of the bottom for me and for us,
Yeah.
that it wasn't over. Like, we could fight.
You know, knowing that, you know, even though this is essentially gearing up to be like the storm of our life, that God was still in that, and that he was a part of that.
I found an Airbnb with a woman who, I didn't know it at the time, but she loved Jesus, you know, and she would just like bring me tea, and we would sit on the front porch and talk, and she just kept reminding me that God loved me, that all of this had nothing to do with me having lack, you know, because I felt like I was trying so hard to do the right things all the time to create that life that everybody says you're supposed to create, and be the good girl and be the good wife and just do everything right. And here I was, you know, just so broken and so ashamed of my lack as a wife, is what it felt like, and my lack as a mom from almost losing my kid, and all this lack. So I think I just had to come to that moment of like, I have two choices. I can either be angry and resentful and bitter and just walk away from everything, start over somehow, you know, figure out what that means and what it would look like, or I can lean into what I knew would be really, really hard, a really hard place of grace for myself, for him, being able to forgive. And I knew that, I think at the time, I knew that even though I was really angry with Josh, I knew it wasn't just about him, you know? I knew that it was about me too. It was also about the areas in which it wasn't lacking like I was kind of feeling in that moment, but I needed more of Jesus.
I think like the pain of that situation was a catalyst for me, because I was going to experience pain either way. It was either going to be a dull pain of being passive and life passing me by, or me losing everything because I was letting it go, or I was going to fight for it. And so I chose to fight. So I needed to do a lot of work with therapy, a lot of work with figuring out, why am I unhealthy, and how is that creating such a significant burden on Jenni and the marriage as a whole? It was straining the relationship because of me. I had to start owning my crap, getting out of a passive state, and actively like working on this stuff and figuring some stuff out. So yeah, it was a really big growth season for me.
I went through I think my process, his was like a fight or flight adrenaline, like rush, and I just kind of became a lot more still, a lot more reflective, a lot more just asking myself a lot of hard questions about what I wanted and why did I want it and was it really necessary. And I had to learn a lot of trust in Josh, trust in God, trust in myself, you know. I didn't need to lead everything. I didn't need to be the person that was checking all the boxes and making sure we were accomplishing everything all the time.
Which is a tall order when like I'm fumbling it so badly.
Yeah. And so I would say the first like 6 months, it was mostly, I mean, he was, like he said, adrenaline rushing. I mean, it was a completely different marriage, completely different husband. Everything was so different, you know, but the adrenaline does wear off, and it did. And so in that time, it was more of this rebuilding of who we are, the couple that we're going to be, of me learning to not have to be husband and wife, mom and dad, but I can just be mom, I can just be wife. Letting go of a lot of areas of shame, things that I had learned growing up in the church about marriage that had created a lot of shame, and not understanding, you know, the freedom that I can have in marriage. And so there was just a lot of undoing.
So right now, like, how would you describe your relationship with Jesus through this all? Because it's very easy, especially as you diagnose and like talk through this entire thing, go, whoa, what the heck just happened? Like, you guys have been through a lot.
Getting into this new season of like being alive, like feeling, like not numbing myself, not like turning myself off, but just living and being present, like in my own life. And so like, it's funny sort of being a Christian in name. For most of my life, I'm 40 years old and I'm just now figuring out what it means to follow Jesus. Yeah. And that to me is exciting because it's the start of a journey where it's like, I don't know where that's going to take me, but it's freaking exciting. Yeah.
I'm still working on that relationship. It's very much a work in progress, but I feel as though as I'm learning to release a lot of this baggage of really my entire life, all the different things from childhood through the last few years even, I am beginning to create that real, tangible, again, relationship with him, that I understand who he is and why he wants me to be someone that loves him. Yeah. You know, I really do feel as though he's created the good out of the mess. Yeah. And that's all I can really ask right now, is that there has been a lot of good that has come from a lot of pain.